Hey, practice owners. So this is video 3 in our 2026 series. So if you have not watched video 1 and 2, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you need contextually to make some of this make sense. So I would strongly encourage you to go back. But regardless, we're going to deliver a ton of value today. I think this is one of the videos people get most excited about because we're giving away our top performing Facebook and Instagram ad strategies and frameworks. We're literally going to peel back the curtain, show you all the stats, the exact offer frameworks, how we build ads, and what the ads look like from top to bottom. But to remind you why we're talking about Facebook ads first, this comes first in our priority list. So when we're coaching and consulting our clients, we want them to put money into certain platforms based on opportunity cost, right? If I've got Facebook and Instagram ads, for every dollar I put in prints me 4 and Google only prints me 3, I want to put as many of the dollars into the $4 machine as possible before I put them into the machine that prints 3. So that's where we are in this process. We call this ramp up phase 1 for the people that are just doing this. And that's meta ads, Facebook and Instagram ads with a really good lead intake and conversion process. We'll talk about those other things, the lead intake and conversion process, in some of the next videos. Today's video, we're going to talk about these strategies and the frameworks and the offer details that are working best for our clients. Okay, so I mentioned these in the last video. Lauren and I went through some of these in preparation for this call. We removed one, so if you see one missing from the last video, that'll be why, just for clarity. But I think the things that matter most to understand these relationships between different data sets. The first one we talked about in the last video was that cost of customer acquisition, how much you pay to get a new client in terms of ad spend, will go down when the attractiveness of your offer goes up, right? So if I run a reputation-based ad, I might only see 3 people for every $1,000 I spend on ads. If I run a really attractive deal for Dysport, I might see 10 people for every $1,000. That's just the reality. Second thing is, the greater the deal, the lower the average client quality. So there's a very important caveat to this. So I wanted to talk about this, but just understand that the better your deal is, the more likely people are to be choosing you because of the price sensitivity on average. But the caveat is usually higher volume up front with this strategy leads to higher absolute volume at the bottom end. So let me explain that like I did in the last video. But it's basically that if you're going to spend $1,000 on ads with a really good deal, and that gets you 10 clients, and only 5 of those clients are good quality clients, let's say, that's still better than only seeing 3 up front. So if I saw 3 up front and all 3 were good quality clients, then my average client quality is really high, right? They're all good quality clients. On the first example where I had to see 10 to get 5 that were sticky, I only have 50% good quality clients. So on average, I'm seeing lower patient quality, but still the absolute volume that's left over is typically better, more often than not for us, when we use that formula. But do understand that the better the deal, the lower the average client quality. So we have practices, some of which choose to have less attractive offers because they're so insistent on average or optimizing for patient quality upfront. Now that comes at an expense. It's higher customer acquisition cost. You're seeing fewer clients and it's more expensive to get them. And generally it's not the best math, but it does maybe protect provider experience, reduce review risk, like those types of things. So there are countervailing concerns, but just understand that principle of that trade-off. Next thing is the law of demand. We did a whole video on this in 2025, but simply put, the higher the sticker price on the service, the lower the demand. Less people are going to buy it, right? More people will buy, if you have a $100 facial and you don't even discount it at all, more people are still going to buy your $100 facial than buy your $4,000 M-Sculpt package, even if you're running a 50% off promo. So that's a basic reality, is the more expensive the service, the fewer clients you're going to see relative to ad spend. We talked about the purchase matrix and your positioning. The purchase matrix, again, is reputation, convenience, and price. So the 3 buckets that in fact impact the purchase decision. And you really want to understand how you stack up against your top competitors on those 3 buckets of factors. Discounts are really effective ways to leverage the action changes attitude principle, meaning that if we want to create perception through experience, our best chance is to get a butt in the seat. Butts in seats is a really, really good goal most of the time. Now, there are caveats, which we'll get to in this video, but those discounts allow us to create perception through experience. I heard someone explain it like this. I want to be able to prove that I'm the best med spa in town. Some people say discounts cheapen your brand. Discounts give us the opportunity to prove to someone we're going to give them the best experience in town by incentivizing first action. And then with package sales, we want to measure meaningful ROI upfront. So if I'm selling laser hair packages or M-Sculpt or microneedling, I want that to be profitable based on initial package sales. So that's an easy metric. It's like if you did a pool install, I always like this example. If I sell a pool for $50,000 and it cost me $5,000 to get a client, and I make $25,000 in profit margin off the pool, I'm in really good shape. I can measure ROI on initial package sale. You can do that with some of the services in your med spa, but for recurring services, pretty much anything your injector or your esthetician does, initial visit revenue covering cost of acquisition plus cost of goods is our general benchmark for success, somewhere in that range. So whatever you connect on initial visit revenue just needs to cover the cost to acquire the client, the cost to service that client in terms of product costs, because the ROI will happen with subsequent visits. So they're based on retention. Anything to add to that, Lauren? Any thoughts on those items? That's the preliminary information I think you have to understand to be successful with Facebook and Instagram ads. Okay, so the other thing, Lauren, we talk about is first, evergreen new patient offers. I just had a call last week with somebody, and I think you've experienced this too. Everybody always wants the new thing, and sometimes it doesn't scratch the itch to tell them the answer is simple. But what we're looking for are evergreen offers that we can consistently rely on to generate new clients. And I see way too many people going back to the drawing board every month and every quarter because they just want to do something new and they want to change it just for the sake of changing it. We're trying to run a business. And if we have something that's consistently producing new clients at a satisfactory rate, there is no reason to stop doing that until it doesn't work anymore. So finding the evergreen promos is important. And then Lauren, real quick, how we think about who we're targeting. Like, it's not people that have never heard of these services before. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of meeting people halfway through the funnel already with a lot of our ads that we're doing on Facebook and Instagram. Rather than trying to capture the people who see a problem or in the consideration phase, trying to decide what type of service or treatment that they want, we're capturing them at the intent to purchase phase. So it's likely already people who have decided that they want Botox or have decided that they want to visit a med spa, and we're trying to capture them in that phase or in the provider selection phase. So a lot of times, and Ricky made this connection to me last week, and it was so crazy that I had never thought of it before. But as soon as I click on a Botox ad, I get 100 extra Botox ads. So that's how the system knows. I've already made the decision. I want Botox. And now I'm going to see many more Botox ads. So we're capturing people at that phase, the intent to purchase or the provider selection phase. And we want to be the ones that they choose from there.
Yep. And in our first video, we talked about the EVA framework and the middle part of the purchasing process being the validation phase. Like Lauren said, you have to understand where you stack up against your competitors on that purchase matrix, because people that fill out your form associated with your ad are going to see other ads. And just because they filled out your form doesn't mean they're going to convert. Go back to video 1 in this series, please. We'll make sure that it's linked here. It's going to be in the playlist. We talk about how to win the validation phase, because you have to understand almost every one of your prospects is going to be considering other med spas. And if they weren't already, Facebook's going to make them, right? Facebook and Instagram are going to put other options in front of their face. And we have to be seen as the most viable option. Otherwise, this entire thing kind of falls apart on us. Okay. So again, another thing we talk about is we don't want to jam a square peg into a round hole. We just talked about this with where we are trying to target in terms of the purchase funnel. I do not want to advertise services that people are not aware of. It's too much of a hurdle to jump to make it cost effective for most services. If I have to educate them and generate interest and desire before action, it's kind of a losing cause. The math just doesn't math. So really, it's got to be services people are already interested in. They're already thinking about it. We're just trying to push them over the finish line to actually booking and scheduling an appointment with us. And so that also goes to specific offer types. So that's what we're going to talk about here now with square peg into a round hole. Another common thing I talk about on sales calls all the time with new prospects is sometimes people just want to sell something that ads are not conducive to selling. And that doesn't mean, so we'll talk about microneedling in this chart in a second, but what we found for some of these things is it's not that it's a bad service. It's not that it doesn't add profitability or an extra revenue generating tool for your practice. It's that it's not the best place to lead with your ad dollars in terms of cost effectiveness and ROI. So with ads, a lot of it is we're trying to establish the relationship and find the gateway drug. And I'm trying to do that as cost effectively as possible. So what we found is typically the way to sell more microneedling sessions at your standard price points with maximum profitability is to sell them to the people that are already doing business with you. So going back to jamming a square peg into a round hole, I don't want to advertise microneedling, but it doesn't mean microneedling is a bad service to have in our med spa. It just means it's not effective to lead with typically. So let's go through the good, the maybes, and the no-goes. And we'll add context to these as we go. But let's just stick with the good first, Lauren. So you'll notice, everyone, this is a pretty small list. And as a med spa owner, you've got a ton of different services, right? I do GLP-1s, I do hormones, I do Botox, I do Dysport, I do facials, I've got the microneedling, I've got lasers, and we've got 4 bullet points on here. I think we might have missed one. What was the one that just came to mind as I went through that list that I feel like we maybe missed? Was there one on there?
I don't
I'll
know.
think about it in a second, because I think there is maybe one that we just missed on that. The hormone therapy maybe that branches off. I think that one we've seen.
I wouldn't call it a good.
Huh?
I'd call it a maybe.
Okay, maybe we'll put that one in the maybes. But this is a small list. And one of the calls I had last week was a client that they just felt like these ideas weren't creative enough. We weren't combining things. We weren't doing stuff that was creative enough. But the reality is we're not here to just scratch the itch of creativity. We're here to generate a business result. And we've got data, years of data and case studies that show that there are certain places that are just really effective to put our ad dollars and others that aren't. So the good, typically, Botox, Dysport, those services plus a facial, the combo, specifically in that order, those two things together, not many combo offers. That one together works, and I think Lauren can talk about why. And then mini lip filler. Those are really the four that we would put as we have high confidence out of the gate. We're going to get a satisfactory result. And we'll talk about the offer details. But Lauren, real quick on the Botox and facial combo, why do we feel like that one works as a combo offer and we don't have any other combo offers with all the other services med spas offer? Why do we feel like that one works?
Yeah, I think the main reason that one works is because a facial by itself is something that everybody wants. And nobody can argue with not wanting a facial. It feels good. It might not be the thing that has like the greatest results like a Botox or a microneedling, but everybody wants it. Nobody can say they don't want it. So coupling that with Botox or Dysport, which is another thing that almost everybody wants, makes us have a really good result in terms of, oh, that would be great to add that onto that. Why wouldn't I, for such an attractive price point? So the price point coupled with the two services definitely has a huge impact. And then on the back end of it, business benefit wise, it allows people to see two providers most of the time, or try two services while they're in your chair once. And it really builds solid retention and has tons and tons and tons of rebookings, mainly because they've grown to like your practice as a whole or your service list as a whole rather than just one specific. So the reason that combo offer works, like I said, is mostly because people want both services. If we try to do something, a lot of my clients will say to me like, oh, what if we did Botox and you can get a first session of microneedling for free? Or what if we did Botox and you can get laser hair removal for free? The challenge with things like that is not everybody wants both of those. I might really want Botox, but I don't really care about laser hair removal. Or Ricky might want Botox, but he doesn't really care about microneedling.
Yeah, you're scared of microneedling. It's just
right. Yeah. So a lot of those offers kind of couple things that maybe everybody isn't interested in, but this is like a wide pool anybody can want and enjoy.
And I think the reason that list is so narrow is because rule of thumb number one is we want the primary thing that we're offering to have broad appeal for it to be effective. And so that comes down to mostly injectables. So now we've narrowed the list. And then by default, the additional item has to also be a broad appeal service. So it has to be a broad appeal, mostly for it to be effective. And there's not many other services you offer in your med spa that check that box. Yeah. And again, specific order there, I reworked it to make sure that it made sense. Here's another reality. Your facial clients don't necessarily want Botox, but your Botox clients mostly all would be interested in a facial. So the primary, it's kind of important to draw that distinction. Our primary is still the Botox and Dysport, and the facial is kind of the bonus, because we understand that the people that are responding to that ad are responding because they're interested in Botox and Dysport, and the facial is the bonus. If you reverse the order, conceptually, you wouldn't have and again, it doesn't matter necessarily in this case, but understanding that framework allows you to have a blueprint if you ever want to experiment with different combo offers about why that matters. Okay, jumping to our maybes. Body sculpting is in our maybe category. We're going to talk about it. Weight loss is a maybe. Super discounted facials are in the maybe category, and for different reasons. And then just a standard filler ad with like a dollar off the syringe, which we'll talk about in a second. And then the last version of a maybe is if you have other services maybe in your med spa that have really high price points and low consumable costs. So there's just a ton of margin basically on those types of services. M-Sculpt is one of those that checks that box. I know we put body sculpting on there. So if you have others, maybe they can work. But let's go through the maybes, Lauren, one by one. So body sculpting, I almost wanted to just put M-Sculpt on here.
Yeah.
Instead of body sculpting. But can we talk about like why? What are some of the challenges around body sculpting and why this doesn't just automatically go in the good box?
Yeah. I think a big challenge with it is just people are skeptical about if it actually works, what it really does, is it painful, what's the price point, things like that. And I think what Ricky's alluding to is cool sculpting being one of those. And honestly, we and allergen reps that we have spoken to, nobody really has a good framework of what works for cool sculpting right now to get it to sell to new patients in the ad space. It's really, really a hard sell. And I think from consensus and a lot of what I've been hearing is if people want to lose the fat, which is what cool sculpting is made to do, they just go to the GLP-1. They understand like, hey, I have this problem. I need to get rid of it. I'm going to just spend less probably and do a GLP-1 rather than this machine. M Sculpt, where I think it has a little bit of luck, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more toning rather than fat burning. So it's finish the GLP-1, now tone the skin that's kind of left over or loose or whatever that looks
and I think
like.
the financials on them sculpts are easier too. You can sell a package for $4 or $5 with relatively low consumable costs. So even if you're spending a lot to get the client, it still can be profitable, where the math on cool sculpting has changed. And then the other sculpting products and service lines, I just don't know if they've got enough brand recognition, or like there's just not enough there in terms of reputation for them to work in our experience. So a lot of generic body sculpting. I'll add something that we're not going to have on our next sheet, which is when I've seen this work for certain people, they're using a bait and switch. And so with your generic type of sculpting products, they're basically doing like a first session at a really, really steep discount, and then relying on upselling those people at a certain rate into packages when they're in. And you're kind of walking a thin line there, because to do that effectively, it does feel like a bait and switch. I've seen the ads that work. I've seen the case studies from other agencies that work on calls with med spa owners, and they're never really transparent around the fact that one session's not going to do anything for you. Mm-hmm. So you're risking negative reviews. You're risking patient dissatisfaction. There's just an inherent risk that comes with that bait and switch type strategy when you're not transparent around it. So that's why body sculpting is in the maybe category. We do have clients that run M Sculpt ads specifically, where there's such high margin that even if they're paying $1,000 to get a client, if they're selling $4,000 or $5,000 packages, they're profitable. But if we're being honest, there's a problem with body sculpting, which is if you look at Real Self and just reviews of those services, they don't have high patient satisfaction. There's not a lot of people that believe in them. So some of you might be listening to this and screaming at your screen or your podcast player here, but that's just the reality on average. Is there's not high confidence around the result with body sculpting, and it's for a very specific person at a very specific situation. All right, next one on the list is weight loss.
Can I add two things to that really quick? Yeah. I think two things to consider with that too are, one, even an M Sculpt ad has a lot of seasonality involved with it. So we see certain clients like Q3, for example, have phenomenal stats. And then in the dead of winter, Q4, it totally drops off, like nobody's purchasing. So keep in mind kind of what season we're running those to and when those work the best. And then the other thing with it too that I've seen is we can replicate like the same exact M Sculpt promo on a device that isn't M Sculpt or cool sculpting, and it has no traction. And I think a challenge with it too is that people have learned these brand names and they see other things that aren't brand name as like a knockoff or a fake device that isn't going to work the same. So definitely keep that in mind too. If you're like, well, I'm trying this promo on my M shape device and it's not working the same, it's definitely something that we have noticed across the board too.
Yeah. We're actually going to save the weight loss and the super discount facials discussion for the next slide, because we can go over, I think those are very math dependent to explain them. So let's go over all those on the next slide. Filler, why does that one fall in the maybe category, Lauren? I know that's really like dropped off a lot the last 18 months, but we still don't put it in the no-go category, still in the maybe.
Yeah, I would say it's a maybe because, one, like Ricky said, it's dropped off more recently than previous years and months that we've seen it running, where people are switching more towards the biostimulators, Sculptra, things like that now. But main reason why it's a maybe now too is customer acquisition cost is quite high. So you have to be careful of that margin on your initial visit, making sure that you are doing a good job with cross-selling and upselling, and making sure you're getting the right type of patient. I think that one's a big challenge. Usually with like a Botox, for example, we get a wide spread of types of patients. We might have a 25-year-old who wants a little bit, or a 60-year-old who wants a lot, and it kind of works for anything there and about. Filler, I've heard a lot of feedback of like, hey, we either get like a really young person that doesn't want to spend any money or doesn't want to do anything, or we get a really older person that needs a facelift and they think filler's going to fix it. And I think that's just a big challenge to push and kind of find that right medium. So I think it's just super, super, super hit or miss for all my clients. Like I have some clients it works beautifully for, and a bigger majority where it's like, that's just not one that we want to run.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one we talked about was just if you have something that has crazy margins, meaning like if you sell a package, you make $4,000 or $5,000 in mostly profit. You just have so much headway in terms of customer acquisition cost to still make a profit on that I would say those things probably still worth at least testing in the ad space at some point. Because even if you're spending $1,500 to get a single client, if you're able to sell $4,000 in profit margin in a package sale, then you would do that all day, right? It's printing money. I talked to a company in New Jersey that with Cool Sculpting at the time, they spent $50,000 a month on ads, and they were doing $250,000 a month in revenue with new package sales, but they had to do that on repeat. It's very profitable because the gap is there, but they pay a lot to acquire a client. So these are our no-goes, controversial takes here. And for those of you who are watching this or listening to this right now, we're about to get to like the real gold on the next screen. So we're going to show you the exact offers and frameworks that we use for each of these. But let's just go over the no-goes and the why behind it. Expensive facials. We'll explain it because it's directly in context to the maybe line item of super discount facials. So let's explain why we don't like more expensive facials as a gateway drug. Laser hair removal. And again, remember people, this is our meta ads video. We're going to do a Google ads video. I think it's got a little bit more legroom there. Laser hair removal, we've tested it a ton. It sucks. And I think the challenge, if I illustrate why some of these things are in the no-go category, it's because the cost to acquire a client is high. And to make them successful, we're discounting so heavily that initial visit revenue profitability is low. And so if we're not making a big profit and we have high customer acquisition costs, we have the worst of both worlds. We're not making initial visit profit and we're not seeing a lot of clients. So it's not that these things don't work at all. And some of you are under an illusion that these things work because you've run ads and you don't have an idea on the math. So you just know I've spent money on that and I know I've seen clients and so it must work. But we're explaining why the details, when you actually dig into the math, it's problematic. Laser hair falls into that category on the meta ad space. Tattoo removal as well. PRP, pretty much anything PRP related. I would say, Lauren, anything you've seen that breaks that mold. That includes hair restoration, I think, too. Microneedling, we talked about. It's not that it doesn't work at all. It's that you pay too much to get the client. You have to discount it. You squeeze your margin, and you have fewer clients, fewer margin on initial visit. You might as well reorder that so that that's not the gateway drug. And then anything that's not very well known, right? If I have to educate you as to what this thing is, like it better be so interesting that it's like got a viral element to it, right? For it to work. But otherwise, trying to get a patient to understand the product or service offering and then to purchase is just too many hurdles to jump, typically to make it profitable. So those things are in our no-go category. Anything we need to add to that, Lauren? The no-goes?
I think just a quick note, kind of Ricky mentioned, remember this is our meta ads video, and our Google ads video will have a different story.
Yep.
That's a big reason for the no-goes. It's not to say if you offer these things that you can't push them anywhere and you can't advertise for them anywhere, but it is really important to remember your target audience and who you're showing your ads to. In Meta, we're showing to everybody. So 1 out of 10 people might want hair restoration. So the cost to be showing to that many people to only get a small amount of leads and a small amount of conversions doesn't make the math work at the end of the day. But if we're going for
like 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000.
Right. Yeah. But to go more of the route where people are directly looking for the service, like a tattoo removal, works beautifully on Google ads because people know that that's what they want and that's the audience we're hitting. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then I also really liked your point, Ricky, of the reason these are good maybe and no-goes isn't because you can't run it and get a patient in the door. It's because of the math associated with it. Like the goods are good because you spent under $200 to get one of these people. That's incredible in terms of customer acquisition costs. The maybes, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, those kind of things to keep in mind with the math associated too.
Yeah, they're just more volatile in terms of performance. And yeah, like specifically just the rule of thumb here is broad appeal. In your advertising on Meta, you don't have an accurate way to target people who you know are going to be interested in tattoo removal. And since that's a needle in the haystack in terms of the response rate, it's just not going to be cost effective, right? It's too small of a percentage of people. So tattoo, if we had a client that all they did was tattoo removal, we would actually do Google ads first. We would reverse the order. I wouldn't care about Meta at all. But for most of you that are offering injectables, we do recommend Meta first, a focus on injectables. It feeds a lot of the sales in the other product lines in your business. But if you're specifically trying to do tattoo removal and laser hair specifically, Google ads can work. Meta ads much trickier because it's just not as good of a response rate, not enough broad appeal. Hey practice owners, Ricky here. And if you're tired of seeing your marketing as an expense, it's time to see it as the investment it should be. At MedSpa Magic Marketing, we specialize in driving predictable, massive growth for med spas. We helped one client generate over 2,500 new clients directly attributed from ads in less than 18 months. And these aren't outliers, this is our expectation. We're HIPAA certified by Compliancy Group, rated a perfect 5 stars on Google, and we provide true consulting and strategic direction to our clients, not just button pushing. If your med spa is able to consistently invest in marketing and advertising, and you want a transformative look at the exact frameworks, ads, offers, and strategies that we use for our clients, schedule your complimentary strategy session with me at medspamagicmarketing.com. That's medspamagicmarketing.com. Okay, so I really want to talk about like what we're about to give away here, because I just frankly have not seen anybody else do this. We have a level of transparency that we're bringing you on these videos that I think is really going to transform the way you think about your marketing investment and give you clarity in what you're doing and what you can expect the marketing investment to do. And I think that might be the most important thing here, right? We need to understand how to influence the purchase decision. We need to understand how to make offers. But if we're just doing this and it's all guesswork and it's just anecdotal gut perception of are these things working or are they not, we're never going to have confidence to push the button we need to push to scale our business the way that we want to scale it. So we really are about to give away the gold. We're going to show behind the scenes of all of the data that we've spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in ad spend to get. We're going to show you right here. And it boils down to simple takeaways, but this is extensive testing, experimentation, and lots of data to give you these numbers. And we'll give you the exact framework that we use to get these numbers, but let's go over the numbers. We're going to give you all of our benchmarks here. So I put it in gold frame this year. And let's go through these one by one. So we're going to give you the exact offer structure that we use and the stats associated with it. So if you're running ads on your own, if you're running ads with an agency right now, if you're doing this like in the future and you just want to have an idea when I hire, what should I be looking for in terms of success? This is going to give you a general benchmark for success. Now, these are general benchmarks. Some of you are going to see this and be like, "What? I've got results that are way better than this." Yes, so do we. My intention, though, is not to underpromise and overdeliver with the strategy advice we're going to give you. We're trying to give you a reasonable benchmark range. And if you surpass this, great. We do for many of our clients. Sometimes we don't, right? There's a range of outcomes. So this is meant to be a ballpark estimation of the result. So let's start at the top, probably our longest running tried and true offer. This is not rocket science, but this is where the data has pointed us. Botox in unit bundles works best. So we've tested, for us at least, we've tested unit price on Botox. We've tested combo offers. We've tested flat dollar amounts off. Still, the thing that works best to us is a unit bundle. And so you could actually do a 30 unit bundle. We haven't done much of it, but I think you could easily do that and you can split the difference in the stats that I'm about to give you. But let's just go over these. Botox at 20 units, we recommend a price point of $159 to $179 as a relative range. Now, Lauren, why do we have a range?
Dependent on competition, dependent on reviews, and dependent on location. So it's all the things that we talk about with our purchase matrix. People who inherently have lower reviews or lower review volume, lower star rating, need to go more aggressive with the offer to keep within that benchmark. If you have higher rating and the higher reviews, you're in a beautiful location, you have great, history, all that kind of stuff, you might be able to get away with going a little bit on the higher end of the price point too, and kind of still stay within range, considering what competition is running as well. So if you have a competitor right down the street that's running $179 and has better offers than you, or better reputation than you might want to go with the $169 and try to beat them out in that sense.
Yep, exactly. So again, remember the simple equation is you dial up the offer attractiveness, you lower customer acquisition cost. And understand relative to the competition, if you've got people that have a good price point and better reviews, you're going to have to be more aggressive with your offer. And here's the scary part of the trade-off. We've kind of just gotten a pulse on this more recently. Is think about the danger here is what we're trying to do is, okay, well, I just need them to not trust my reviews. I need to create perception through experience. I'm confident they'll love me when they get in. So I'm going to run an even more aggressive offer. So they feel like they've got to come to me because the offer is so good. And then I'm going to prove to them I'm way better than what they've seen in some of my Google reviews. That's kind of the goal. But what happens for some of you is you maybe are, and again, we did our video that came out this past week, Lauren, was on this exact topic. If you have a 4.6 or a 4.7 as a med spa, that's like having a 3.5 as a restaurant. Just to be blunt, it is, because you've got competitors in your area that are running 4.9s and 5-star ratings and have a ton of reviews. So if you're the less reputable provider based on the information people can see publicly available online, you're going to need a better offer to get those people in. But the challenge is you're now more likely to attract an even more price sensitive person, because that person has decided to choose you because of the deal in lieu of your reputation, in spite of your reputation, right? So they're like, okay, I understand this med spa's got better reviews, but I care so much about the discount that I'll push that aside and I'll choose you because your deal's so good. So now you have even more of an onus on knocking it out of the park and converting an adequate number of those prospects. And the reality is, if you've got an issue with reviews and you're not in as good of a position as your competitors, probably means you're not there yet. So I think you have to look operationally as, hey, if these people are going to come in and we're going to spend money to get these people, we have to retain them. And know that it's still a numbers game. You're not going to retain half of those clients if that's you. But can you retain a rate that's satisfactory enough to generate profitability and growth? You can convince enough people that you're their med spa home, then it can work. But 20 units at $159 to $179. I've got all the benchmarks on the screen, so screenshot this. Let's just read the CAC and initial visit revenue numbers. Basically, on that offer, we want our customer acquisition cost in ad spend to be less than $175. I would say have loftier goals, but that's a good benchmark, right? And then with that, I want my initial visit revenue to be $350 or more. And you should have splashes of people that are coming in spending $1,000, $1,200. And then you're going to have some that spend $200 or $300. So really, that's a bare minimum, I would say, with what we want in initial visit revenue. But that gives you something to shoot for with 40% retention. Next offer is a 40-unit bundle. And again, the trade-off now is we're going to have higher customer acquisition costs because of the law of demand. It's an inherently high sticker price. And so $349 to $379 is a range at 40 units. Let's say customer acquisition cost on that campaign is going to be closer to $275 now. But initial visit revenue goes up. Patient quality goes up. So we're going to have a little higher retention and a little higher initial visit revenue. So you can calibrate to what makes sense for your business. The Botox bundle plus custom facial at 20 units that Lauren mentioned, $279. Lauren, what's the price point we normally do on that one? $279. Mm-hmm. Again, if you can dial that up and you're comfortable going $249 or something, you could probably make this even better. But at that price point, we want basically customer acquisition cost to be $275 or less. But initial visit revenue on that, we want it pushing closer to $500 plus minimum. Dysport, $3 a unit promo. Lauren, why do we use the unit price on Dysport, but on Botox we use bundles?
Because Galderma prices it that way. Or that's how Galderma frames it. It's 3 units to 1 unit. So 3 units of Dysport is equal to 1 unit of Botox. We understand that, some of you feel like it might be bait and switchy because most people do frame it as a Botox price just to keep things cohesive and simple, probably in your town. But the reality with doing it this way is it's not a lie. It really is the way it's formulated. And the sticker shock of the price is what wins the game here. So as soon as somebody sees a neurotoxin or an injectable for $3 a unit, they might be thinking it's Botox for $3 a unit. So we have a lot of frameworks in place in the back end to make sure we take care of that, like explanation videos and making sure that people know that that's not the case up front. But the sticker shock of the $3 a unit really does kind of increase people's interest, getting more leads, higher conversions, and things like that.
Yep, it's got that wow factor. It's the Seth Godin purple cow effect, as I say. It's like if that offer stands out. So we'll go through in this series. We're going to go through a nurture and automation video. When leads come in, what are we doing? One of the things we do on that ad is we preemptively educate the patients as to why the pricing is different, so there's no confusion in office. We want to overcome that objection early, but that is our top performing campaign across the country. We have clients that have well under $100, under $70, under $65 customer acquisition cost on that campaign. But let's say bare minimum, we want $140 or less customer acquisition costs, with initial visit revenue exceeding at least $300. Mini lip filler at $249. We want customer acquisition cost under $175. People are spending at least the offer price, hopefully a little bit more because you've got some splashes of upsells. The sculpting sessions. Really,
can I add something to that, Ricky?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. On the mini lip filler package or price, what I would say, and you'll notice here that IVR goal or initial visit revenue goal is exactly the same price as the offer, and the other ones aren't. They have a lot of upselling involved. With the mini lip filler offer, it is hugely a hit or miss, and it's very largely dependent on your providers and their ability to cross-sell and upsell. So a big tip that I recommend is to have in your back pocket a promo on a full syringe or a syringe and a half. That will be super helpful in terms of getting people to buy a little bit more and spend a little bit more up front too, and kind of get that patient quality up too.
Yeah. And for those of you that are listening on podcast form, you're probably like, I want this information somewhere. I'll include the YouTube video link or the screenshot in the show notes for the audio version of the podcast. So you have this to reference, so you can just listen and hopefully enjoy. And if you're watching on video, just screenshot this. Okay. The sculpting session package, 40 to 60% off. We want customer acquisition cost $1,000 or less. And that's initial visit revenue on package sales should be $3,500 or more. Again, you can do the math because that should be a profitable on initial package sale for you. The math has to make sense. So whatever the gap is that you need to achieve between customer acquisition and package sale needs to, that box needs to be checked. And then I'm going to consider any amount of retention on a service like that icing on the cake. So that's why I have non-applicable there. Filler, dollar per dollar amount off a syringe. The other thing you'll notice is these are straightforward offers, not combining different services. And we kind of explained that on the last slide. But the filler $250 off a syringe, Lauren, under $425 customer acquisition cost at the end of the day, but initial visit revenue should be pushing closer to $1,000 plus.
Yep.
Weight loss is a loss leader. It's your Costco rotisserie chicken. We're going to run a very aggressive, you need to incentivize action here, and you need a really good deal to do it. Because this is becoming commoditized fast. This has evolved and changed a lot in the last 24 months. You need people on the program, and it needs to be the default that that's just where they get their weight loss, and they stay on the program for that reason. So your initial visit offer for first month needs to be really good. $99, I would say, ideally. It's going to give you probably the best result. And you want customer acquisition costs to be under maybe $200 on that promo realistically. So you're treating month one as a loss leader, and you have to know your retention numbers and have confidence in your retention for this to make sense. If my average lifetime value is, 5 months from a client, now I've got a very profitable campaign. But if I've got a bunch of people that are coming for a month and quitting, I lose money. So you really need to be cognizant of that. The others, they're basically, if you look at the numbers, we're basically trying to break even between cost of goods and cost to acquire a customer on initial visit revenue. This one, we're actually knowingly going negative on initial visit. So you have to make sure the retention's there. That actually is the same for testosterone.
Yep.
The facial, $25. The reason that we do this really steep discount on a facial and so if you go back to the previous slide, we had moderately discounted facials in the no-go category. This specific version of a custom facial where you have low consumable costs in the yes category is this very basic principle. On most of these things, I'm going to break even on a facial. So if I can sell a facial that's got $3 cost of goods for $25 and my customer acquisition cost is $25 versus spending $100 in acquisition cost to get someone in for a $100 facial, and I know the entire success equation is based on retention, upsells, and cross-sells, with this version of the facial, I'm seeing 4 times the number of clients. That's the simple math. So if I can quadruple my at-bats, the entire strategy here comes from retention, cross-sells, and upsells. So I need more opportunities. And with a severe discount, as long as I'm basically breaking even on initial visit or somewhere close to it, any amount of cross-sells or upsells are creating ROI, and I have 4 times the amount of at-bats. So that's why we don't recommend that, because these services naturally have less retention. So Botox, you have a floor because you have higher consumable costs. With some of your more expensive facials, like a hydrofacial, same kind of thing. You can't discount it as aggressively. But what happens is you have inherently a lot of people that are just price shopping and they're jumping around. There's not a perceived differential in outcomes with esthetician services like there is with injectables. People will jump around for a cheap hydrofacial way more than they'll jump around to get a different Botox provider. So for that reason, if we're going to do a facial, we want to go to the extreme. And I want to maximize my at-bats because I know this is an entire game of creating relationships so I can cross-sell and upsell.
I will say too, that is the one appointment where you need to go gung-ho on getting action in that first visit. So you need to be talking about, what are your goals? What is your skincare routine like? Can your injector come in and introduce themselves and talk about their services too? Like, use that visit as like, oh, this is my chance to sell this person. Like, go full out on it. Don't just let them get the $25 in and out and be done.
Yeah, and so you may be asking yourself, well, if that's true about the esthetician services, why not go to the extreme, though, on Botox? And I think the reality is there's not going to be a difference in patient quality that's massive enough between the client that's excited about the $29, $25 facial versus the $100 facial. People that are buying a Tox, They understand there's a floor to that, and if you go way beyond the floor, you can pretty much guarantee you're attracting one and dones. I don't think there's as much of a difference between retention on a $29 facial and a $100 facial that's going to offset the benefit of what we just described. And some of those other services, same thing. Hey there, wanted to briefly interrupt the episode to make a quick ask. If you're a podcast listener, it would mean the world to us if you'd leave a review for the podcast, whether that's on iTunes or Spotify. It's something I hadn't really remembered or thought of asking for, but it does help us show up more frequently so that we can reach more people with the information that we're providing. So it would mean the world to us if you'd leave a review on iTunes or Spotify, if you're listening on audio. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you're in the loop for future videos and you don't miss any of the content that we're putting out. Okay, Lauren, our static image framework. So now we're going to teach you how we build our ad graphics, the basic checklist that we're going through, and we have some samples on the screen for those of you that are watching on video.
Okay, so when we're talking about the framework of graphics and what we're doing with those graphics, the number one goal is to quickly grab the attention of the user. So immediately we want to make somebody stop scrolling in their feed. So that's the reality we always talk about is Meta, they didn't go searching for the offer or for the service specifically like they would have on Google. Instead, they're scrolling through their feed mindlessly likely. So we want to have something that's bold, pops, and makes them stop their scroll. You'll notice kind of a theme with a lot of these ads that are darker colors and colors that really pop off the page. We don't use a whole lot of white backgrounds. In the winter themed one, you'll see that we kind of did a little, but mostly that still stands out with the red and the green. The next is you want to clearly highlight the offer or the service that's included in it. So large title with what the promo is, Botox, the facial, the lip filler, for example. And in all of these, we have the offer box as the main part of the graphic here with what the price point is going to be and what's included in the promo. The next thing is we want to incorporate trust signals. So utilize pictures of providers. On almost all of our graphics, we're using pictures of providers. We'll talk about in a minute here that we test model images as well quite often. Sometimes it works better than others. But you want to utilize your providers, start building on factors of know, like, and trust so that they're not just choosing you based on the promo, but also based on your credentials or what your providers know, what your star rating is on Google, things like that as well. You'll see in each of these, they're kind of blurred out here, but with the person, the picture of the provider, we have their name, their credentials after it, and then it says what they are. So founder, board certified physician, things like that. And then the star rating, 5 stars on Google with the location really pops off the page as well.
Yeah, it goes back to the purchase matrix, right? It's reputation, convenience, and price. I want to address all three of those things in my graphic with a bold, attractive design. And this is kind of silly, but you know the thing where like you blur your eyes? I almost feel like you want to pass the blurred eye test. If I blur my eyes, what is the thing I can still read visibly and clearly? And that goes to say something about sizing and positioning. I want, like Lauren said, this is demand capture. If somebody's been thinking about filler or thinking about Botox or they're interested in getting a facial for the holidays, I just want them to instantly understand what it is we're offering. So we've made the mistake before. Like I'm thinking of a client we had in San Antonio where they had 3 different tox products that were listed. So the primary part of the ad just had a price. And then underneath it in much smaller font were like the multiple services. Think about that for a second. The only thing that stands out upon scroll in that case is the price. So the offer and the price need to be, I would say, similar in sizing. Like if you see here, Botox only $179, they're going together in tandem. The 20 units is more of a footnote. I just want Botox $179. Dermaplane facial, $25. Lip filler, $150 off. The promo and the service have to be very prominent parts of the ad graphic and design to stop the scroll. And like Lauren said, I didn't catch on to that, Lauren. We actually use the clients like actual colors more as the primary backgrounds, not as accents, because that boldness of design tends to check the box of standing out. So we've talked about even like with clients where they've got a bland color palette. If they've got things they've usually used as like a tertiary color, we'll make that the primary color on the ad because it's the thing that pops. And that works. We've seen that reduce cost per lead in and of itself.
I would say another thing too with the provider images is that carries so much weight in the graphics like you wouldn't believe. Sometimes we've had people share provider images that are just really bad quality or like a selfie of the provider rather than an actual headshot, or something with the white coat really stands out too, or even the scrubs. So those are the kind of things you want to really focus on are good quality provider shots. They're looking at the camera, grabbing eye, what do you call that?
I don't know. Grabbing your eye.
Yeah. Just looking at you.
Eye contact. Yeah.
Eye contact. Good God.
Yeah, we like the eye contact line. I always say, think about it at a grocery store. If you pass somebody in an aisle at a grocery store and you make eye contact with them and you see them 6 aisles later, you're more likely to remember, or even you could remember what they look like an hour later, as opposed to if you just like saw them looking at the cereal aisle and walked past the side of their face. So there's something about these graphics making eye contact. I think it's in that book we have, Lauren, the cash advertising short form ad copy book. I think he references it in there, and we had been doing that before that, so it's kind of cool to see that as a reference before you and I read that book.
Yep.
But yeah, eye contact with the camera, and think about it. Initial impressions. People want to do business with people that look like, hey, we make judgments whether we want to admit it or not. And if we see somebody and they're smiling and they're looking at the camera, it's more likely to build a connection than a generic stock photo. So 9 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, these types of photos outperform. So it's a simple framework, right? This isn't groundbreaking. This isn't something crazy, but this is just what works. So it works for us right now. We're going to talk about testing and other options here in a second, but that's the basic checklist that we've made. The reason you see so many ads look like this on social media, again, I think is not because we have groupthink. I think it's because this is the framework that works, and we understand the things that influence the purchase decision. We want to check those boxes in our advertising. How important is your graphic? It's very, very important. So this one thing, I think this would sometimes lead to like hundreds of percentages in improvement with your ROI because of your cost per lead. Like if you have a bad graphic that's $30 lead cost and you have a good one that gets you $10, all other things equal, you've tripled your response rate. One of my favorite examples, it's a really old one. So before we had exclusively niched down into the med spa space in 2022, we've been in business since 2012 and we work with all sorts of businesses and even different medical practices. And one of my first clients that I ever ran Facebook ads for, I don't remember what year this would have been, maybe like 2013, 2014, somewhere in that range. We ran Facebook, might have been like 15, I don't know. I want to speak out of turn and people call me out in the comments that I got it a year early. But on those ads, they had given me a photo from the companies in their network. They have a network of other audiology practices, and they had run Facebook ads with this picture of people talking on a park bench for people that have hearing issues. And we used that, and we went back to the drawing board and we reiterated and made new versions of the graphics with this thought process. So this was kind of V1 of our current framework, which is that image says nothing to the person that has hearing issues. We have to explain it in the copy. I want my image to carry some weight here in terms of communicating the marketing message. So the next version of the graphic we used, you couldn't put text overlays on graphics at the time. So the next version was a hand to the ear with sound waves coming out. Their cost per lead went from like the $70 range to like $15. It was a crazy, crazy difference just based on an image. So when you start with this framework, I don't think you're going to see that much of a result with iterations, but testing is important. And let's show some minor examples of how little things can make a difference here. So Lauren and I actually have a separate video on this. If you go to our YouTube channel and you find this video, it's called Better Facebook and Instagram Ads Results for Your Med Spa. We talk about some of the tests in more detail. But for today's sake, let's just give a couple examples. So I just wanted to show this one because I thought it was such a good example of how such a small difference can impact lead costs. So this is a version of one of our practices we work with, and it is the exact same graphic, the exact same framework. The only thing that changed was it's a different picture of the provider wearing a different outfit, faced in a slightly different direction. In the first one, she's kind of slanted at a 45-degree angle, looking back at the camera with a syringe. In the second one, she's smiling, looking right at the camera in a different colored shirt. That alone, now I didn't check to see if this was fully statistically significant, but Facebook picked a winner here. So there was enough of a difference statistically for Facebook to pick a winner. One of these has a $14.93 cost per lead. The other one has a $21 cost per lead. It's a 42% increase in lead cost from a very minor edit to the graphic. So there are all sorts of versions. Lauren mentioned using staff photos versus model photos. Many of you that are just using model photos, this one thing can improve your ads performance. The boldness of your design, the professionalism of your design, the placement, the color scheme, all of those things can make a difference. So testing is important. Now, don't go back to your marketing agency and ask them to, there's work scope here. If you're paying someone to do this for you like us, you have to manage it appropriately. So what I would say is at least be doing this on a quarterly basis, be batch testing creative. But image types, offer framing, just simple differences in graphics, the design elements, the color scheme, all of those things can make a difference. And this is just one example. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Lauren? We already talked about the color scheme example. Okay, ad copy, checking a few simple boxes here. I guess, Lauren, the first thing is, I'll mention this and then you can kind of go over the rest. The first thing we want to do is going back to the purchase matrix, reputation, convenience, price. If those are the things that impact the purchase decision, they're the most important. I want to reiterate those in my ad copy. So you'll see here, it's get 40 units of Botox, only $398, rated a perfect 5 stars on Google, located in Honolulu, Hawaii, offer valid for new patients only, right? All of the key parts of the marketing message, where we're located, why you should trust us, and what is the offer, all clearly present in the initial headline. And then what happens below that, Lauren? Or other checkboxes
Below that,
here.
we add in a ton of detail, and you might look at this and say, that is so much text. Like, you'll hear a lot of other agencies or people talk about the length of your ad copy should be short, should be quick, should communicate the whole message in the first couple of sentences. But the importance here is we want to give people the option who like long form and who want to read more and want to learn more, the option to have all of that there. So we include more about the service, what it is exactly. And in that too, you don't just want to talk about what Botox is or how it works, but add in some things like here. It says, when artfully injected, the results are remarkably natural looking and discreet. Things like that. Then you want to add in more about the practice or more about the provider that is displayed in the ad. So this one says the blank, which is the business name difference. And then it walks through that business specifically and what it talks about. Then you want to give super clear instructions on what to do next. A lot of people will see an ad, see an offer, and be like, well, where do I go from here? How do I book? How do I get the offer? We always include a here's what to do next with get offer button below, fill out the form, and then schedule your consultation. So very clear information on what steps to take next. And then we like to end it with the closing of, we look forward to meeting you, add a little bit more about the business, more about the star rating, etc. Anything to add to that, Ricky?
No, that's good. I was just, so the reference that we have here for so that same book I just talked about, he has a whole chapter here called Ad Agency Secrets from the book called Cash Advertising by Drew Eric Whitman, I think is the guy's name. And he talks about the research around long versus short ad copy. And basically his takeaway is all of the research, even for web-based ad copy, long copy outperforms short copy in all 3 tests that he ran in this book and referenced in the experiments. And he said this basically isn't a debate anymore. And I think the reality is you can do both with long form. I can put the short form version of my ad copy, which I would say is our paragraph 1. Get 40 units of Botox, $398, rated a perfect 5 stars, located here, offer for new patients only. That is our short version of the ad copy. And then the extension of that is certain people have different buying sensitivities. If people need more information and they want to get excited about doing business with us, we need to add more compelling copy to get them over the hump. So I think that is our basic formula. The short version is at the top. It elaborates below, like Lauren said. The only other thing I was going to add here is location based. One of the things we stumbled across recently is in certain instances, you want to be clear about where you're located. So Facebook cookies people driving through your area. So sometimes saying your city is not enough. We had a client in San Diego. We still have this client in San Diego. But for the longest time, we just said San Diego on the ad copy. And when we were looking at it one day, we were talking, and you look at the map, and it's kind of a ginormous, sprawled area. And you might be like 40 minutes away from one part of San Diego versus the other. So we figured we probably needed to give people somewhat of an indication about what part of San Diego we're in. So if you have a neighborhood or pocket that you can reference that explains the part of town that you're in a big town, that might make sense to incorporate into the location information too. That'll reduce confusion. But yeah, that's the gist of how we build that ad copy, as Lauren mentioned. Cool. Okay. The last thing here, last couple things. Experiment and test. We shared with you the framework that's worked best for our clients from the data and testing that we've done. We always have an assumption that there's a better way out there, and we're always trying to find it. Now, the challenge is for us as an agency, we have to be selective with how we experiment with our clients' dollars. We can do that in small increments because we need to basically rely on the things we know are going to work, that we have high confidence in. If you're doing this and you have a willingness with either with your agency or internally to do this, you can test and experiment. Just allocate a certain % of your budget to go a little bit more creative. So some of the things we talked about on our team retreat were completely different offer frameworks. Voice over on top of the graphic solution. I've seen people just run a box that's in plain text on a plain background that just says like something clever in the headline. There are all sorts of different iterations. There's an unlimited amount of possibilities to what you can fit on a 2D space in a square. This is just the framework that's worked better for us. You can go to Facebook ads library, Meta ads library for free, and you could look at all the ads that are running around a specific service offering. So I did not cherry pick these. I just took some screenshots of different frameworks. Like the one on the left is at 62, I didn't expect to be turning heads, especially not his. And it's like a couple, I guess in their early 60s in a car, right? Totally different framework than what I just described to you. I don't know the data around that, but it's an interesting thing that's off the wall and more creative to maybe test. Right? The middle one doesn't have a provider image at all. It's just the product. And it just says it's about looking refreshed, confident, and like yourself. And it's a little picture of the vial of Botox. Don't know if that works better or worse. The one on the right, Botox can enhance your smile. It's a different use case, I guess. I was talking about enhancing your smile. And it's playing into a specific angle for Botox. But all of these things, again, I think just go to, you want to have some percentage of your budget set aside for experimentation and testing, because if you can unlock those big improvements, 30, 40, 50% improvements to your lead flow, that extrapolates to an improvement in ROI. So always be testing, always be iterating, both in terms of ad copy and creative. You'll notice here I didn't mention reels or videos in the framework that I shared today. That doesn't mean it's not on our radar and that it doesn't work. And one of the realities is this is the stuff that we've done for our clients that has worked best to date. I think reels have their place, but here's how I would kind of explain them. And we're going to be doing more on this year. In sports terms, I said your static image ad is your game manager quarterback. It's the person that's not going to go in. They're not going to throw a ton of interceptions. They're not going to do something incredible, but they're not going to lose you the game. A reel or a video ad, I would say, has higher top end potential and lower bottom end risk, or lower bottom end performance capabilities. So on the one on the left here, I said your static image ad, it's always going to be a 6 to 8 out of 10 in performance. The one on the right would be the reels. It can go as low as a 2 or 3 and up to a 10. So there's a lot more volatility because there's so many more factors that can impact the result, right? You could do the exact same thing and just the person talking to the camera doesn't come across as charismatic, and then the same place saying the same thing as somebody else. So there's just too many different factors that can impact performance. But I do think they're worth testing and experimenting with if you can. We're doing it more internally. We've had some good success in case studies, but I would encourage you to be very strategic about them and be very focused on the hook and the delivery. So a good page I recommend, Personal Brand Launch. The girl's name is Ava. She does a really good job of giving you frameworks to make sure that you're grabbing those users' attention in the first 2 to 3 seconds, so that if we're going to say something, it's going to be something interesting enough to keep our audience beyond the first 1 or 2 seconds. The advantage you have with static image ads is it quickly communicates the marketing message without any time delay. A video means I need people to pause, watch, and listen. And if I lose them in the first 2 seconds, I don't even get to deliver my marketing message. So just being strategic. If you're going to use video, maybe think about text overlay that checks some of the boxes we talked about today, or be very strategic with the hooks and the content. The other thing I would add to that is say something unique. If you get on a reel and you just say, Botox versus Dysport, here's the difference. That maybe is a good hook, but then if what you deliver is just overly generic information that your competitor would also regurgitate, it doesn't differentiate you and get people excited about doing business with you. So kind of have a hot take, add some nuanced perspective that gets people excited specifically about doing business with you, and maybe test some reels. The last thing here that we talk more about now is what we call the KLT deposits, know, like, and trust deposits. So even if you're running offer-based ads, how can we supplement our offer-based ads with reputation-building posts that build magnetism? So people that are just excited to do business with you, and the offer is just like the cherry on top. They're excited to do business with you because you've been building a case for why people would choose your med spa over weeks and months and years. And a business that I really like, it's another agency that we're in a group with, Platform Marketing. Every time they work with realtors. So they're a marketing agency specifically working with realtors. And every time I log into Facebook and Instagram, I'm friendly with the owner. I see all of their posts, and it'll be a case study from this one person. It'll be the owner just actually posting a text post like your friend would on Facebook explaining a concept. It'll be their picture from their retreat and their event that they do. It'll be some sort of principle or philosophy that they're explaining around like marketing for realtors or a concept they're teaching. But all of those things build deposits so that over time, I start to develop a more favorable view of this brand and this business. I think that this is really important. So being strategic about what you're doing on social media and at least boosting good posts that follow the framework that I outlined on the last page from Personal Brand Launch, with good hook and a nuanced perspective and some case studies. If you're going to do before and afters, voice over your before and afters, please. Instead of just showing the before and after, explaining the why and the nuanced is what allows you to establish yourself as an expert and an authority, and to develop those know, like, and trust factors with the people that you want to be choosing your med spa. So I think it's a really good idea to be intentional about the stuff that you're posting and to have a boosted budget, because if you just post to social media outside of your ads, the only people that are going to see it are people that already follow you for the most part, that are already your clients, and that's fine. But if I want to reach new people and build those know, like, and trust deposits at scale so that I can create magnetism, I want to be intentional about what I'm doing on social media, and I want to use a boosted ads budget to consistently reach my local market. I don't care about going viral halfway across the country. I want people that live within 2 miles that are women age 30 plus to consistently see new parts of my marketing message that continually get them excited about doing business with us. So that was the last thing that's an addition that maybe we didn't talk as much about last year. But on our next video, we're going to go through a specific ad campaign walkthrough and setup tutorial. This is kind of part 1 of our Facebook and Instagram ad strategies here for 2026. Stay tuned for the next video on the walkthrough, and then make sure you watch the previous 2 in the series so you don't miss anything contextually here. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.